Okay, so welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning in for this informative talk about endometriosis and PCM. Now, this is in light of Endometriosis Month in March. There is a lot of awareness about endometriosis, how it affects women and their bodies and hormones. And there's a lot of really good information out there. So if this is a pit stop for you, if this is one of your first interactions with someone who provides complementary medicine, this is a starting point because there's so much more information. So I want it to be like a bit of hope for you that you're definitely not alone in this, and that a lot of natural therapies are working towards solutions and support in this area. So it's definitely not, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I will work through some basics of what endometriosis is today and how Chinese medicine and traditional Chinese medicine really looks at it. And I love the concepts of that because it really breaks it down back to the basics. I'm sure when we go to a specialist and we go to a medical practitioner who gives us medical facts, it can be quite confronting. And I know for myself, having had announced that I have an autoimmune pattern in my body was quite a shock. I know in the past I also had a bit of a shock factor when I discovered the presence of PCOS in my body, and words and phrases were thrown around like infertility and not able to have children, not able to menstruate properly. And it was sort of coming across definitive at the time, which can shake your world around, and there's enough globally going on. So I'm sure if there are symptoms of pain and uncertainty in the body, that really adds to the stresses. So I trust that this gives a little bit of hope and education about how we can start creating positive changes inside. So what is endometriosis? Well, endometrium is the lining. It's the lining of the uterus. It's what sheds on monthly basis. So when there is a regular menstrual cycle and we shed, we have a bleeding period, the lining of our uterus actually sheds. It's triggered by the drop of progesterone, and it causes us to have that bleeding period. Now, endometriosis is the presence of that lining in different parts of the body, not necessarily within the uterus. It's actually outside of that normal environment. And those places can be ovaries, it can be within or in between intestines, it can be around inside the lungs, or in severe cases can be in the brain. Now, this is sort of what medicine tells us, and clinically what we see on really regular basis is a lot of that presentation around the pelvic area. Very, very rare. We've had one case in this clinic, in our clinic at Natural Harmony, where that was present in somewhere else in the body, and it was actually not detected where, but they have suggested that there was a presence in tissue and causing the hormones to fluctuate and do some really interesting things in terms of symptoms and signs. But they weren't able to detect where exactly. And that's the thing, it can move around. And this tissue can regenerate just like normal endometriosis, not normal endometrium lining does throughout the month. It regenerates and bleeds just like in response to a normal bleeding period. However, there are some symptoms and signs that go with that make this a sort of a definitive condition. And those signs can be fatigue and heavy bleeding, but predominantly pain. Women with endometriosis suffer from a lot of pain. Now, this pain can be during period. It could be in the middle of the menstrual cycle during ovulation. There's pain during sex, or on moving and emptying bowels. It could even be around urination, and it can radiate towards the lower back and affect lower limbs, down the legs and inside of the thighs. Different pain levels are reported, but all in all, the pain is quite severe. So there are a lot of research and documentation around endometriosis and anxiety and depression, because then the woman is dealing with coping mechanisms through pain, and it can very much affect mental health as well. Now, this is interesting because when we look at the body in Chinese medicine, what I like to say, I'm going to bring you into more the world of Chinese medicine now and the holistic overview. What I'd like to say about the body, and when I look at the woman's body, is that your body is a beautiful garden. Okay, so I love analogies. So if we look at the body as a beautiful garden, and to maintain that garden, we need resources, and in particular, those resources are brought from all different organ systems, and we measure that in the body by feeling the pulses. Okay, the pulses in the wrists. So usually in treatment, we would feel the pulses. We'd also look at the tongue, but all in all, we assess circulation within energy channels. Now, these energy channels are independent of the system or network that is, for example, cardiovascular system, system of vessels in the body, and it's independent of central nervous system, which is a system of nerves in the body, but it interacts with both, and that's the interesting thing. I like to say to my patients that when we work with Chinese medicine, whether it's acupuncture or herbal medicine, we work on the energy level, and to help you understand what that actually is, I like to say that we work on the cellular level. And when there's a cell, if you've ever seen a cell under a microscope, it's more or less round, and there's organelles inside of it, like DNA and mitochondria that produces energy, and all these little organelles, all these little parts within the cell, they have a role to do, and they're not just static either. They actually move around and communicate on the inside like a team, and they also move out and back into the cell, and they collect hormones or respond to different hormones that bring different information in and out of the cell. So there's actually movement. Okay, so and if you look at the blood under a microscope, this blood, when it's healthy, it's not static at all. It's bouncing and it's moving, and that's what makes the blood in the vessel move. That's what brings that resource into the garden, into your body, and makes it flourish, makes it thrive, makes all the processes work smoothly. Okay, So when we do detect what is going on inside, we're checking, we're actually checking the pressures of the garden hoses, okay, or your energy channels. And we're literally checking, are all of those channels working? Are they running smoothly? Are the garden hoses moving smoothly? Are those resources, the energy that the blood brings with it, and the resources and nutrients, are they getting to where they need to go? And if they are, if the water's moving really well, awesome. And if they're not, if that garden hose is not emptying, then there is a blockage that needs to be detected. Okay, so it's a couple of pictures, like literally pictures for you to relate to, because the next thing I'm going to talk about is blood stagnation. And when we talk about endometriosis in Chinese medicine, we don't actually use the same word. We use a different phrase to describe this pattern of stagnation of blood in the body. Okay, so I want to go back to this slide over here, and can you see how the water in the hose is under a lot of pressure? It's not just trickling smoothly, it's sort of just spurting out. Now, when there is a blockage on one end, that can happen sometime. That pressure can be really forced in the body. Now, something else that we know about endometriosis as well, and I'll take a little step back into the Western medicine world, is that it's actually looked at a bit of autoimmune response. So because it's ever so changing, and it's also looked at as inflammatory response in the body. And unfortunately, there is no cure or no treatment for it in Western medicine. However, we see really good clinical response to Chinese medicine with our patients. So we can't say and guarantee that there is a cure, but we can say that there's ways of supporting this in the body and creating great relief and creating better flow and better patterning inside the body. So instead of having these pressures like a hose with a lot of pressure, we want to create more flowing environment, which will reduce, in turn, reduce inflammation. So if we go back to this blood stagnation idea, we'll think about that hose analogy. And there are a few different reasons why this pattern can occur in the body. Firstly, it can occur if qi, or energy, that's another word for energy, that vital energy, that sort of force that travels through us, if that becomes blocked. And the most common reason for energy to become blocked, there are many reasons, but the most common one is stress. Stress can come in so many different ways. It can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be it can be muscle memory, it can be subconscious stress, it could be stress on the body through being overworked, people who are on their feet all the time and they don't feel stressed mentally, but their body's under a lot of stress because they're working long hours, for example. Or there is not enough regeneration and revitalizing, maybe if the sleep is low for shift workers. Okay, so there's different levels of stress in the body, but if the qi is stuck, it will cause the blood to get stuck over time. Okay, so the other reason for blood getting stuck in the body is this environment of cold residing in muscle layers and also residing around different organ systems. Chinese medicine has this belief that environment can influence our health through what we put into our body, but also in terms of temperature and what enters our body. This includes viruses, bacteria, internal imbalances that can be created through pathogens entering our body as well. So really, cold is more of a general word to describe maybe infection or something foreign that is in the body from the external sources. And another reason for blood getting stuck is when there is a presentation of deficiency, lack of energy. For example, malnutrition or poor nutrition. So the base, the foundation is too low to convert and deliver a good energy output. So when we talk about deficiencies, generally speaking, a lot of it comes back to gut health. So if we dig deep, and this is all taking lots of different case studies and seeing what really impacts the source of deficiencies, most of the time it comes back to gut health. And that in particular is related to what's the quality of nutrients going into the body and what is the level of absorption of that nutrient, of the nutrient. So if the nutrient is low in quality, then we cannot convert and make good blood. Good blood in the sense, full volume, it's moving in circulation and reaching all different parts of the body. It's getting to different issues or problems in the body quickly and is able to address those issues. Okay. And if the nutrition is there and the nutrients and the quality of nutrients is present and it's going in, but the gut, the underlying strength of the process of the gut itself, maybe the lining is not healthy, maybe there are some inflammatory issues in the gut, and the absorption of those nutrients is not happening, the same thing is going to happen. The blood volume won't be sufficient enough, the circulation will slow down, and then blood will get stuck in places. And it really then depends on the person's, on woman's individual patterns of weaknesses in the body, where that presentation will take place. Okay, and in this case, we're talking about endometriosis, so it could create this internal imbalance and be one of the causes of endometriosis. So, can it be a few of those things is a common question, and the answer is yes. Sometimes these reasons are multi-layered. There could be the stress, and there could be environmental factors like maybe infections or allergies or sensitivities, and there could be the gut issues altogether. And that's sometimes up to us as practitioners to be detectives of that and see what's really going on and where to start first. So a lot of what can help resolve and smooth out blood circulation is coming back to the basics, which is, food is our medicine. And when we look at food, and I've already mentioned words like inflammation, there are certainly a lot of foods available to us that can help reduce inflammatory processes. Foods like your greens, like red berries and root vegetables that can start supporting gut health and help the process of digestion, and in turn create a better cycle in the body and reduce that inflammatory cycle, that angry cycle that's going on inside. Seeds and fiber is reported to really have a good response in terms of inflammation and reducing inflammation. Then reducing dairy, and there is some interesting information about dairy and having dairy in particular parts of your menstrual cycle. For example, a little bit of good quality dairy straight after your period, when there is nurture that's needed, that when we're building what we call yin, or the blood, we're building it up, we're making sure that volume is good. And certainly when we look at moving and promoting blood circulation, because if we're talking about endometriosis being stuck blood, we need something gentle to move it without creating more bleeding, for example. So when it comes to diet, warmth is a really, really good property to move stuck blood gently, really, really gently. So we have to start thinking about what sort of foods have warm properties that are available to us and are very common to create that environment in the body. And straight away, you're probably thinking ginger, turmeric, garlic, safflower, things that are a little bit spicy and a little bit quite warming on the palate, and then make the circulation smoother. So all of those foods, they have also anti-inflammatory processes or properties. And when I mentioned gut health, it's really, really important to consider a good quality probiotic. So if we multiply good bacteria in the gut, our digestive processes will improve, and how we respond to different factors, immune factors within our blood, will start improving also. So if this potentially is a response through our immunity, then it's sort of like our own body, our own tissue attacking different parts, different organs, creates like an autoimmune response. And that's part of looking after immunity. And there is a lot of information to say that protecting gut health can also protect and nurture our immune responses. And there is so much to say about gut health and mental health as well. So that all goes hand in hand. And of course, piling up on lots of greens. So green veggies, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, spinach, kale, all beautiful, beautiful veggies that reduce inflammation in the body. There is research to say gluten and wheat can do the opposite, can add to that inflammation. When it comes to my patients, I tell them straight up, caffeine adds to inflammatory processes in the body. It actually is a diuretic, and thickens blood. It makes blood move slower, so it will actually add to that stagnation of the blood. So reducing or eliminating caffeine is a really good step. And I also talk about alcohol consumption, which can also contribute to inflammatory processes in the body. So that's a little bit on food, and it's very basic, but sometimes when this big thing is in front of us, basic is best. And starting with small steps towards creating habits around that is really, really important. Then I want to talk to you a little bit about lifestyle, okay? And lifestyle and endometriosis, really all the information that's out there, but everything that Chinese medicine preaches as well, is creating a calm environment in the body. So if something is angry or inflamed or red, once we calm the central nervous system, then the body is able to recognize and prioritize where to start repair work. If the central nervous system is calm, repair and regeneration is easier. It's more available. If we are on edge and not able to soften, then straight away our brain indicates that there is danger, and we harden up, we contract, and it actually creates more pressure and more tension and more blood stagnation, and it's counterproductive to healing processes. So activities like meditation, deep breathing techniques, yoga, in particular yin yoga, which is a slower type of yoga that focuses on stretching and breathing techniques on the floor, are not so dynamic. Walking, swimming, even though that's not available to us at the moment in our current conditions, but low to moderate exercises create better environment for that healing to occur. And it's interesting sometimes because women who come through with endometriosis symptoms and signs and diagnosis from Western medicine, they have history of being athletic and working their body really, really hard, whether it's through sport or through work. And it's counterproductive to what needs to happen for the body to address the problem at hand, or even contribute to that. The other thing that I strongly believe in is mindset. So going back to those initial conversations that women will have with their specialists, with their doctors, and if we hear the information and accept it, and that information is not necessarily productive or positive or uplifting, if our minds accept it, it actually contributes to the progression of that condition, that disease, that illness, whatever is going on inside. It then causes us to go and be Google doctors, and we get images that confirm that indeed my symptoms are there and this is why I'm feeling it. And then there is this cycle in the brain that pretty much confirms it's true. So visualization, healthy visualization and healthy thinking can help restore, and I really strongly believe this, but help restore affected tissue in the body. there's so many different levels on a medicine level, levels of or stages of endometriosis. But it is something that's in our control as women, as individual women. It's something in our control to plant different images in our mind. A lot of it feels out of control, but if we can change our thinking, it can actually start to do some of the repair work on the inside. And I'll plant this seed as well in this presentation, and I'm sure I can build on this in another time. But if we can build a healthy image of what our reproductive system looks like, and then couple it with positive feelings about ourselves, and I'm talking about stepping into more feminine state of being. I'm talking about having a better relationship with ourselves as female beings. I'm talking about practicing and being softer in our responses to different people in our lives, our responses to life's happenings in general, and also our responses to our own thinking about ourselves. So all of this creates more flow, and flow is yin energy. Yin is everything that's fluid, everything that's feminine, everything that is gentle, still. Yeah, but remembering that there is always the opposite that happens at the same time. So even though we're still and we're mindful, there is still little bits of movement that happen on the inside, and our body's doing the work. So we don't have to be so go, go, go. We don't have to be so aggressive in moving our body to create internal movement that is gentle and healing. So I trust that this is of really really helpful and crucial information. I know it may be quite simple in its delivery, but I hope it's lighting up some light bulbs in there and bringing some ideas to what changes can be made easily, and where you can start prioritizing that without necessarily going into drastic measures, and applying that, creating consistency of that in your life. Before I finish today, and I know I'm going a little bit over and I'm probably going to get shut down by Zoom, but before I do, and to also allow for a little bit of question time, I want to share something that I read in a book, and this book is A Secret Language of Your Body. Okay, this is by ONA Fertility, but there are a couple of different versions by different authors. Now, the idea is that there is a psycho-emotional reason for everything that is an imbalance that occurs in our body. So, for example, if we have recurrent migraines or recurrent toothaches or period pain, endometriosis in this example, there is a reason, because we are acting certain ways, we're behaving certain ways, whether it's in our mind, in our bodies, physically. Our body has this pattern or habitual way of being. And if we can become aware of that pattern, we can break it. So there is a little section in this book about uterus and possible contributing factors of why there could be imbalances in the uterus. So more or less, this affects our reproductive system. So I'll read a little bit about that. So if there is a problem within a uterus, because we're talking about that uterine lining, okay, it's to do with psycho-emotionally, to do with discontinuing the feminine aspect of self, holding on to old hurts and rejection, mother issues, feeling depleted, ungrounded, unsupported, neglected, or unbalanced, over-concerned with other people's problems, lack of appreciation and nurturing for self, and this is something that we've covered, constant need of approval. Okay, so these are some of the internal issues on the emotional level that could be brought to our awareness that we could explore. And it's something that we can very much flip and start changing for ourselves. And I find journaling is a really, really awesome tool. If any of those hit a note, anything that I just read out, I would suggest to write that down and explore it in a big writing exercise, just dumping it all on paper, not necessarily to share with anyone, but to decongest, to debunk what is going on in the body, on the emotional level, on the subconscious level, that may be driving certain processes inside. So time flies so fast, but I'm going to open up to a couple of questions that could potentially help me with maybe part 2 of this conversation, and it is an ongoing conversation for women. So I know there might be some questions, so this is time where you can unmute and ask away.
Hi, thank you. That was so helpful.
Oh, good. I hope it was.
It really was. Just very quickly, I do have 1 or 2 questions, but what was the name of that book again?
It's called The Secret Language of Your Body.
The Secret Language of Your Body.
By Ina Segal. And I get my books from like Book Depository at the moment, so yep. I'm sure it will be available
The
there.
Secret Language of Your Body. Yeah, cool. No, just because that sort of notion of what's going on in your body having a direct link to, you know, other aspects of your life, that just really fascinates me. So I might look into that book.
Yeah, definitely. And there are different versions, so you could do a bit of a Google and have a look at different, what else is available, maybe more depth. Yeah.
I guess my question is, like in terms of everything that you just said, in terms of, you know, different aspects of your life that you can focus on, you know, to try and see an improvement in pain management and that sort of stuff, would you say that they are things that you would look into as well as acupuncture before going down the drastic measure side that, you know, Western medicine tries to suggest, like, you know, like laparoscopies and all that sort of those
laparoscopy is certainly, laparoscopy is the definitive diagnosis. This is how you can definitely confirm that there is endometriosis, and that they take a sample and it tests the sample, and then they can confirm 100% that this is going on. Without laparoscopy, it's not definitive. It is a diagnosis based on symptoms alone, so it's not it's not certain diagnosis. So that's one thing that you can do to understand 100% what you're dealing with. And that's something that can be discussed with your doctor. Now, interesting, I'm glad you asked, and I've asked about sort of natural treatments and alternatives. And the interesting thing that came up, because I was curious to see, you know, what we do in the clinic versus what research says and what's suggested. And they were saying that they have done some research around twice weekly acupuncture and herbal medicine over a period of 8 weeks, having really great results in terms of pain management. Now, is that, like, realistically speaking, from where I stand, is that the end solution? No. I think it's a beginning of creating a better pattern, better balance in life, and every woman would have a different severity level, different case presentation, and we always individually, and that's why it's so hard to find good, strong research, because there's so many different factors involved that, you know, each woman is very different. But I thought that was very interesting, because we're probably still undertreat, and we still have pretty good results and pretty good outcomes. So I thought to myself, gosh, if we were to double that over 8 weeks, I wonder what sort of results a woman would get. And they're certainly, indicating much better results. So, and certainly you could, you know, obviously together, two therapies like herbal medicine and acupuncture would do much better together, but you could do one or the other. And there's still, you know, there's still support there in both of them independently.
The only other thing that I was just wondering about, it was something that you mentioned right at the beginning, where you said that there are quite a number of different areas that it can be located in. Is that something that's determined by your doctor? Is that right? Or do you base that off what symptoms that you've got?
And this is the uncertain part. Because it's
that's what I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, because it's ever so changing, and I think if we neglect, the body can sort of get a little bit out of control. To Chinese medicine perspective, like if we come from the perspective of Chinese medicine, if we talk about stuck blood, right? So imagine that hose, the blood inside of it, or the flow is not happening, it's stuck. There will be spaces within the system. So like there'll be lack. So if there is a stagnation somewhere, there'll be lack somewhere else, okay? And if that presentation happens over a long period of time, there could be something else that we call wind. Now, wind is not like gas, like flatulence. That's not the type of wind. It's the wind that we generally see in nature, okay? And so if we imagine wind on a windy day, and say someone puts some rubbish out, all that rubbish will be moving around everywhere, right? So if there is a blood stagnation, and specifically with a blood deficiency combination, like there is a lack in gut health, lack in blood quality, and that blood is stuck and causing pain, it can also move around easily, because there is a lack of volume in the vessels. So it can sort of put pathogens, and if we want to call it that, that can move around easily in the body. So it creates this notion of wind. Okay, so it can spread like a rash spreads around. So it's internal, right? So this could be one way of explaining why it can just pop up in different areas. But commonly, very, very commonly, we just see it mostly around the digestive system and within the pelvis, within that pelvis, rather than, it's very rare in my experience personally to see it in other organs and other places in the body. Yeah, I think it needs to be quite severe maybe for that to happen.
Beautiful. Well, I think that was all that I had in terms of questions at this stage.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you. It was really helpful. I think I have to, definitely start to look into it a little bit. I'm just trying to let it process a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.